We're in a series called Cow Tipping. What we're doing, you guys have asked questions. We're going to answer them to the best of our ability. And what we do, I'll give you kind of the ground rules. I'll give them every week. We start with Jesus. That's who we follow. So we're going to find the answer with Jesus. If we can't find that, we'll go to the New Testament, to kind of the first church time frame. If we can't find it there, we're going to jump to the Old Testament. If we can't find it there, we're going to give you some principles or contextual answers. And if we still can't find it, what we're going to do is we're going to tell you that, hey, this is my opinion. It may not actually be in the Bible black and white, but this is our best opinion based on me and several guys that I have in my circle that I'll shoot them out random questions, usually about 6:30 in the morning when I'm up thinking and they're just waking up, so I can get a real true answer, which is usually not polite. So that's how we do it. If you have any complaints, and I am sure this week there may be a couple, again, the email address, if you want to argue with me, is www.timclements.com. Please send them there. So here we go, jumping right in. We've got some questions this week from Club 56. If you don't know what that is, that's our 5th and 6th graders. They've sent in a list of questions, so we're going to answer a couple of them this week. Can I write in my Bible? Can I write in my Bible? Well, here's the answer to that. That is not actually in Scripture. It does not say thou shalt or shall not write in our Bible, but I want to answer that very easily as absolutely. This is my opinion. Absolutely write in your Bible. Well, I believe that God is perfectly okay with that. As a matter of fact, I encourage it. It's a form of journaling, and what this does is when God speaks to you or God speaks through a verse, write it down, because there's going to come a day when you're going to re-reference that and look back on it, and it would be great for when God spoke to you for that to be in a Bible. I've got a picture of Jana, actually, who's over our production. This is her Bible, and that, to me, is worship. I love it. I love everything about it. God is speaking to her. And so there's actually a verse that could tie in with it a little bit. I heard it this week. I was in a meeting. And you guys are going to hear some more roll out of this. There's a vision within our church that Bryant-Denny Stadium becomes a venue for a Michael W. Smith, kind of an awakening of all churches getting together. It's a phenomenal vision. I love the thought behind it. And that's kind of in the early stages of the prayer. But this verse jumped out at me. It's actually found in Habakkuk 2, verse 2. Write down clearly on tablets what I reveal to you, so that it can be read at a glance. Well, obviously, we don't use tablets anymore. We use the Bible. So write it down. When God speaks to you, 100%, absolutely. One of the things I love, I grabbed my dad's Bible. He worked at Goodyear for about 30 years, and at lunchtime, he would do his quiet time, and he would journal. It is amazing, the thoughts that I can get from that. So parents, I even encourage you, because one day, what a legacy to hand your child the Bible and everything that God has spoken into you. Question number 2, also from Club 56. This is always a fun one. Which version of the Bible is the best? I got real quiet. Which version of the Bible is the best? All of them. I'm going to actually answer that. I love that answer. I'm going to actually answer this. I know what you're asking, so I'm going to give you a very simple answer for Club 56, but I know that this question goes deeper to a lot of adults in this room. So let's start out with, what version do I think is the best? I think the U version is the best. YouVersion, you can find it. It's an app. Life Church out of Oklahoma. You can download it for free, and here's why I like that. It is that little brown Bible square that you can find on your phone. It has almost every translation known to man on that. So you can actually read what is easily readable. You can cross-references. You can compare it. It is a phenomenal app. I believe that the YouVersion is the best version, because you got so many tools in that. If you want to do a daily devotion, there's devotions all throughout there. There's men's, there's women's, there's youth, there's kids, if you're going through something, you can find a reading plan devotional. You can actually read straight through the Bible in that. So that is my answer to you, to who sent that. Now, the deeper question that I've already gotten some text messages asking me this week, well, which version are you going to say is the best? So let me ask you a question. I'm going to give you 4 vehicles, and I want you to raise your hand. I'm going to tell you what vehicles they are. I'm going to give you a Ford, a Dodge, a Chevy, and a Toyota. So I want you to raise your hand on which one you think is best. How many Ford folks do I have in here? Raise your hand. Like 3. Good job. All right. How many Dodge? I got any Hemi guys in here? Right? I hate Dodge. Every Dodge I've had has broke down, and I've got one right now that I'm not going to say on camera that I'm going to bury in a big hole and burn to the ground. But that's so cool. That's cool. How many Chevy? Deep South Chevy. All right. How many Toyota? Foreigners? You don't love America. You don't? My dad worked at Goodyear. Buy American, right? Buy American. We'll put some Goodyear tires on it, even though Toyota's built in Texas. Their headquarters in Japan. So you're a sinner. You're a sinner. All of you, sinners. Do I actually have any like Hyundai? How many Highlands hipsters do I have? Any Hyundais? No? All right, good deal. Here's the deal. I can ask that question, and y'all can argue, and you can give me all the acronyms about found on road dead and dead on the whatever Dodges is, and dead all the time, in my opinion. But I can ask that question, and y'all will argue with me till the cows come home which one is best. And ultimately, it's going to be determined by what you need it for. And I'm just talking about really trucks. I'm not even talking about cars. But when you start asking, I would ask you, when it comes to a version, where are you at? I mean, are you looking for one that's just readable, like you're kind of new and you need one that's easy to understand? Or are you looking for like a study Bible that you can cross-reference and contextualize? Or are you looking to go like word for word, literal translation? I mean, what are you really looking for? If I'm looking to haul a 7-horse slant trailer, I'm probably driving a Toyota. If I'm looking for gas mileage, I'm probably driving a Ford Ranger. Do they still make those, Ford Rangers? That's one of my first trucks. I love Fords, but it doesn't matter. It depends on what you need it for. The way you determine, and see, this is where the tension rises if you're a church person. If you're not, this question is kind of like, what does it matter? But if you're a church person, I get text messages and I get articles all the time sent to me about how the NIV is not good and how the message, as you heard, is not good. And we haven't come out with the Tumblr, but I suspect there's an emoji Bible coming. But I get these text messages and articles about how one is not good, and what they're basing it off of is what is the most accurate? Like, what is the most accurate version of the Bible? There's 2 ways that the Bible has been translated. One of them is called formal equivalence, and what that is literal translation, word from word, all the way through the Bible. And actually, the most accurate version of the Bible is the one that you find in the Hebrew language. So there you go. The other way that you could translate it is dynamic equivalence, and what that is that's more concept translation. It's more like thought for thought. The accuracy of the translation, when it increases, the readability of the translation decreases. With the readability increases, the literal word for word translation decreases. So which is better? And typically people will argue this, King James or NIV or NLT, but can I tell you, there's so many versions out there that the argument in and of itself, actually none of those are even in the top 3 of the most accurate translation of the Bible. If you were looking for kind of a middle of the road Bible, the Christian Standard Bible, anybody got one of those? Never even heard of it until I started studying it. And then there's the NIV. Those are kind of the middle of the road that's kind of readable, but, almost word for word. But some of y'all would argue the King James Version is the only translation. And actually, the King James Version is not even in the top 3 of the most accurate translations. And so here's my deal. How I answer that question is very simply this. I think we try to put God in a little bitty box. And I think to think for a second that God can't speak through any version of His Word is a little bit of Christian arrogance. I think that God can speak through King James. I think that God can speak through NIV. I think God can speak through NLT. I think God can speak through CSB, New King James, whatever, Good News translations. I even believe, this is where you're going to get an email. I believe that God can speak through the Message version. Cricket, cricket, cricket. I'm not saying that's the version that I read, but I wholeheartedly believe that God can speak through it. So wherever you are in your walk, if you have a version of the Bible that you can understand and God is speaking to you in that, you keep reading that one. Cool? All right. Not so cool to some of y'all. Next question. Do I actually have to rest on Sunday from Club 56? My guess is you've had a parent that has told you that you're not allowed. I grew up in a world where you weren't allowed to fish, you weren't allowed to hunt, you weren't allowed to do anything on Sunday. You could go to church. It began about 8 o'clock in the morning and it ended sometime around 9 o'clock at night, and there was a little bit of time to eat something out of a crock pot. That was my Sunday growing up. But I used to think that this question was really, really easy to answer, and it is an easy answer if you answer the question as it's asked. Do I actually have to rest on Sunday? One, if your parent tells you that, first and foremost, children, obey your parents, their rules, their house, 100%. You need to obey what they say. But do you actually have to rest on Sunday if you're making the decision for yourself? And the answer is no. Uh-oh. Here's the deal. Really, if you look at it, the Sabbath is not really on a Sunday. That started a little after 300 AD within the Roman Empire, and we celebrate our Sabbath on Sundays now. But by the question, do I have to rest on Sundays? No. But here's the deeper question. Do I need to rest on a Sabbath? And this is one that has actually challenged me as I have dug in this time. And it's kind of opened my eyes. Now, obviously, this is one of the Big Ten, right? It's on the tablets. Moses brought it down, Exodus 28 and 11. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Just for the record, I primarily use the NLT. I have a New King James sitting on my nightstand. My kids have an NIV, and I use the NLT. So when we put everything up here, it could be one of about 8 translations, but today I'm using the NLT. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, or any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them, but on the 7th day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Easy answer. I mean, you have 6 days. Remember to observe the Sabbath. Nobody works. That means you. Easy answer, right? Well, here's the caveat. Those who say, yes, you have to have a Sabbath each week, that's what you're gonna point at. However, Jesus comes along in the New Testament and he throws a little bit of a wrench into this statement, because where I used to not really think this was even a discussion, Mark 2 verse 27 says, then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. You see, back in the Old Testament times, the Pharisees had taken it to the oomph. They were like, you can't, even today, over in Israel, they have Sabbath elevators that you don't push a button. As if that's work. You see, Jesus was saying in this verse that God created the Sabbath day for our well-being. It was a covenant between him and his people where he was saying, you do what you need to do on 6, and on the other one, you worship me and I will take care of the rest. This was actually one of the covenants between God and his people. But Jesus, who is the new covenant, came along, and again, Matthew 12:11, and he answered, if you had a sheep that fell into a well on the Sabbath, wouldn't you work to pull it out? Of course you would. So he's saying, Like, yes, there should be a day of rest, but if something comes up that really needs to be done, don't be Pharisee about it. Of course you would save your animal. Of course you would help somebody out. If you drive down the road and you see a little old widow on the side of the road and her tire's flat and she's trying to change a tire, you're not going to stop and help her because it's Sunday? Well, no. But by Pharisee law, that is what they were saying. So Jesus is saying, well, yes, you should rest. He said, I didn't come to abolish the law. You should rest. But then he goes on, John 5:17, Jesus replied, my Father is always working, so am I. Should our mercy and our compassion stop after day 6? Of course not. Pharisee synagogue leader actually said that he should not heal on the Sabbath. There's this big ruckus because he healed somebody on the Sabbath. And make no mistake, Jesus intentionally did that. And the synagogue leader said that, you know what, you should heal on the other 6 days, but not on the Sabbath. It was a big deal. But then in Mark 2:28, so the Son of Man is Lord, even over the Sabbath. The Son of Man is Lord. He was creating his new covenant. He is the Sabbath. Our rest should come in Jesus Christ. So do you have to rest on Sunday? The verbiage part of me wants to go, no, you don't. Sabbath is actually Saturday. If you're going to rest on Saturday. Does that mean you can't watch Alabama football? I don't know. But when you go to Pharisee, I guess if you jump up and down, I guess if you grill out, I guess if you go hunt, I guess if you do all that, then no. But see, we're not bound by Old Testament law anymore. There is a new covenant. I would answer it this way. Should you take a day of rest? Absolutely. God gave that for us. The reason that he gave us the Sabbath was for our benefit, not his. Should you take time to rest? Yes. Here's the crazy thing about a Sabbath. A Sabbath is not just meant to take a nap, which taking a nap is biblical. But it's not just meant for that. A Sabbath is actually to focus on God. So should you take a day that you focus your worship on God? Yes, absolutely. You should rest. You should worship. You should focus on God. But I would argue that should happen every single day. Your rest should be in Christ. Your worship to Christ is every single day. So see, that answer isn't quite as clear as it seems. Old Testament, absolutely. New Testament, Jesus seems to say that I am the Sabbath, rest in me. Alex McFarland actually said it best. Since Jesus was the fulfillment of the law, he is our Sabbath. It's okay to have a day of rest, but our true rest comes in Jesus. Cool? Is there a right way or a wrong way to worship? Again, Club 56, you're asking some awesome questions. I love it. All of the questions today revolve around worship. I'm assuming by this question that you're actually meaning what type of song, what type of vibe, what type of, is there a right way? Do you go hands up, hands down, hands in your pockets, hand behind your back? Is worship only out of hymns, or can worship be with rock and roll? And here's what I would tell you by the way you asked this question. God gave us massive amounts of freedom in worship. We see instruments, we see songs, we see dancing, all parts of worship shown throughout Old Testament to New Testament. People who say only hymns are true worship, well, here's the deal. That's how you worship. That's not absolute worship. Those who say you can have instruments, those who say you can't have instruments. See, we see instruments all throughout the book of Psalms. We see David singing and playing instruments. We see in Ecclesiastes, there's a time to dance. Worship, however you worship in whatever style, is your worship to Christ. The old hymn, Amazing Grace, is the 1990s. I Can Only Imagine is the early 2000s. Good Father. And so how you worship is based on your style. It's not what you're singing, it's how you're worshiping. Did you know the top 3 worship songs, contemporary worship songs of all time, based on the amount of chord sheet downloads, based on the amount of purchases of those tracks, is Mighty to Save. Anybody remember that one? He is Mighty to Save by Hillsong. Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone is number 2. By Chris Tomlin, and How Great Is Our God by Chris Tomlin. I'll tell you what, How Great Is Our God comes on the radio. I jump back to the 90s, man. I'm like, how great? I'm like that weirdo at the red light, right? That's cool. But my jam is I Can Only Imagine. And I'll tell you this, where's Brian Gear? He hates that song. See, I'm closer to God than he is. Yeah, how about them apples? But I love that song. I want to play it at my funeral. Put me in a pine box, play that, and throw a party. I don't care. I can only imagine. When you think of the words, that song just resonates. But for some of you, How Great Thou Art. I looked up what are the 3 top hymns, and this would be an argument to some of y'all. Guess what was number 1? Amazing Grace. Guess what was number 2? Holy, Holy, Holy. Oh, I just struck a worship nerve. Yeah, she about to get her jam on. You can come up and sing it. Here's the deal. How Great Thou Art was number 3. So let me just encourage you, whether it's How Great Thou Art, I Can Only Imagine, or Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, it's about worship. A.W. Pink actually said in his exposition of the Gospel of John, he said this: it is a redeemed heart occupied with God, expressing itself in adoration and thanksgiving. Might be the best definition of true worship I've ever read. Think about that. It is a redeemed heart occupied with God. You should be so lost in worship. You're not worried about what the person on your left or your right. You're not worried about whether you're hitting all the notes. You're not worried about whether anybody's looking. You should be so occupied with God that your heart feels like it's about to explode. And whatever style that is, man, get your worship on. A.W. Tozer says it like this: true worship is to be so personally and hopelessly in love with God that the idea of a transfer of affection never even remotely exists. Again, another great definition of true worship. So consumed. And can I tell you something? Whatever style you get consumed with God, man, put it on the radio. If that's old school hymns, if that's rock and roll, like my favorite is Zach Williams and a guy named Cade Fleener, who's the only Southern rock Christian guy out there that I know. But I get my jam on with that. So I want to encourage you, whatever it is, worship to it, play it, knock yourself out. So what, is there a right or a wrong way to worship? Nope. But there is a way that when you worship, your heart should be so consumed with the Father that it feels like it's going to explode. Hebrews 13:15, therefore by him let us continually offer the sacrifice of praise to God. It doesn't say let us offer the sacrifice of a hymn. It doesn't say let us offer the sacrifice of a Hillsong. It says let us offer the sacrifice of praise to God. Praising the Father. That is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. Praise and thanksgiving is worship. Next question, the poor widow who gave everything she had. Does this mean we have to give everything we have? This is actually a story that's found in Luke. It is 21, 1 through 4. While Jesus was in the temple, he watched the rich people dropping their gifts in the collection box. Then a poor widow came by and dropped in 2 small coins. I tell you the truth, Jesus said, the poor widow has given more than all of the rest of them, for they have given a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she has. The quick answer to this question is no, it's not a requirement to give every bit of your money to God. I said it a few weeks ago. I used to think that tithing was like the apex of Christianity, and a tithe is 10%, the first of your income or first fruits. And what I have learned over time is that the tithe is not actually the apex of Christianity. It's really just a baby step. It's simple obedience of your Father. The Bible talks about it over and over and over, depending on which way you want to go with it. There's over 2,000 verses about money and possessions in the Bible. And it is one of the most intense conversations you can have as a pastor from the stage, because if you're not in church or you're new to church, this is the topic that you will use to kind of stay out of church. Well, they just want my money. But if you've been in the church a long time, I get this argument from long-term Christians. Well, they'll try to justify the tithe doesn't exist, or the tithe is an Old Testament principle. The truth of it is the tithe does exist. God is very clear about it. Jesus backs it up in the New Testament over and over and over. But God knew that this topic of money would be the biggest thing that actually keeps us from wholeheartedly trusting and having faith in Him. Matthew 6:24, no one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and you will despise the other. You cannot serve God and, if you have certain translations, it says mammon, which is the false god of possessions and money. My version says you cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. You see, there's this tension when it comes around money. This story right here is not actually talking about the tithe. It's actually talking about extreme faith and extreme trust. And when Jesus was pointing this lady out, they were standing and they were watching, and there were people coming in and they were dropping big checks, and Pharisees wanted everybody to see what they gave because it was a status symbol. Right? Some things never change. Even today we see in churches where big check writers, they want everybody to know because it gets you a gold plate on the side of your pew, or it gets your classroom named after you, or there's some status in that. And Jesus was saying, whoa. He said, those guys, he said, it didn't even dent their pocketbook what they gave. They're just doing it. But this lady, this poor widow lady, she gave everything that she had. What does that mean? It means this. He was pointing out what extreme faith and extreme trust is. Because if you give your last dollar to God, what is that saying? It's saying, God, I'm trusting you. It's a little bit like the Sabbath. Sabbath and tithing kind of run in the same vein. It's acts of worship, but it's faith. It's saying, God, I'm going to believe that in 6 days I'm going to work and you're going to take care of the seventh. God, I'm believing and I'm going to take my 90% and I'm going to give you 10, and you're going to do more with that 10 than I could begin to imagine. Well, this lady actually went above and beyond in extreme faith, and she said, I'm going to give. And she didn't do it where she stood up in front and said, look at what I gave. Because the story, she only gave equivalent to 2 pennies. What does that even do, right? It does a lot. Extreme faith in God. And see, here's the deal. I'm not a prosperity preacher. You give, gold dust isn't going to fall from the sky. You're not going to get a big old house. God's not going to drop a bass boat in your front yard. It's not going to happen. But He does tell us to tithe. But in this story, He's actually showing us what total trust in Him really looks like. There is a cross-reference story found in 1 Kings. But Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go ahead and do just what you've said, but make a little bread for me first. Then use what's left to prepare a meal for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There will be always flour and olive oil left in your containers until the time when the Lord sends rain and the crops grow again. This lady had very, very little left. And this man of God pops in and he says, make mine first. And then go ahead and make you some. But here's what you need to know. Trust that God will always provide. Extreme faith, extreme trust found through the lady who dropped 2 pennies. And here's the deal. The brilliance of God when it comes to money is everybody's on the same playing field. 10%. Old Testament, 10%. Jesus backs it up, 10%. Can't really get around it. But here's the truth of it, is God put us all on the same playing field. Tim's 10% and my 10%, you know what? It looks exactly the same. You know what it looks like? 10%. Have I lost anybody? That's what it looks like. If you got a big 10%, if you got a small 10%, it's not the amount of money. It's the amount of trust and it's the amount of faith that you place in God. So I want to encourage you, if you've never tried that, start somewhere. Start 1%, start 2%. If you've been given 10 and it's just a check-off box, try 11, try 12. But either way it goes, extreme faith and extreme trust is shown through that story. That is what that story actually talks about. Next question, moving on down, is this. If there are no tears in heaven, will I be able to see a loved one in hell? Won't that make me sad? The best answer I can give you in this world is actually the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Jesus is talking. It is a parable, though. It is a story Jesus is using to illustrate. But I suspect that the stories Jesus used to illustrate were based on things he had seen. Son of God, right? So he knows what's going on in the afterlife. And he's talking about that there is a poor man who is sitting with Abraham, and there was a rich man that was across a huge divide, and he was in torment. And he was begging God he was begging Abraham, just touch the tip of my tongue. So there does seem in this story to be some relevance to where you can see what's going on the other side. People will also point to there's a great cloud of witnesses cheering us on, so they can obviously see what's going on. There's the argument that you won't be able to see. The Bible is a little bit fuzzy on both of that. Can you see what's going on in the afterlife? Can you see what's going on in heaven? Based on the time frame, some of these is actually talking about after the throne judgment. When you see the verse that is talking about in Revelation where it says he will wipe away every tear that is found after the throne judgment, the great white throne judgment. And I don't know, will we be able to see those who didn't accept Christ? Will we be able to see that judgment? Will we be able to see those in our family who chose not to accept him? What are the cause of the tears that he talks about is no longer going to be there? Likely the reference is to the tears that we've shed on earth due to the sufferings and the persecutions and the broken hearts and the sin of the world. Those tears will be wiped away. Sin and its sorrows will vanish somehow. And this is where I have to say this. I'm not God. I can't begin to speak for him in this capacity. At this, I don't know. But this is what I know. God in his mercy, God in his amazingness will have this area covered. There will be no sorrow in heaven. Somehow, God will cover the hearts of his people. I believe this. I suspect when we see the pureness and the amazingness and the unblemished awesomeness of God, that we will also see how bad and how nasty and how black sin truly is. And when we see in person the sacrifice of God's Son, I suspect that we will see the rejection of him totally different. I suspect that we're going to see it different when we're face to face with the Father and when we're face to face with the Son. When he says, put your hand in my side, I believe we'll fall on our face weeping at what he did for us. And I believe that those tears will be wiped away and that he will say, gladly. Because now we can spend eternity together forever. Last question. And this is a doozy. I get asked it every year. And I'm going to answer it year 2. And I'm not going to answer it ever again. Okay? All right. Good. Just laying that out there. Do you think you should wear yoga pants or skinny jeans that are too tight on your butt? No, I do not think I should wear yoga pants ever. And all God's people said, amen. I do not think I should wear skinny jeans because I don't fit in them. I used to wear skinny jeans, believe it or not. They were called Wranglers. There you go. There's a bigger question in this. Slightly aggressive, but I said I will answer all questions given. And by me saying but, that was a question, so I'm just quoting it. Can you please explain why you think it's okay to wear flip-flops? I believe it's dishonoring to God not to wear your best. Let me ask this question. What is your best? What is Sunday best? Is your best based on price tag? So I've had 3 people walk up to me today and actually say, I've never seen you in tennis shoes. Well, I wanted to wear my best. In my closet, that hurts. That's why I don't wear yoga pants. I don't do yoga. In my closet, that's the best. It's the most expensive, right? I don't buy expensive shoes. But that's the best, based on price tag. But is Nike really the best? Let's talk about that. Is Nike really the best? I just ordered a new pair of flip-flops. They have combat boot soles on them. And they actually have rivets from the casings of some of our special ops troops over in Afghanistan. And for every pair of flip-flops that you buy, $3 of it goes to educate and put a Bible in the hand of an Afghanistan lady, young girl in school. So my question is, what's your footwear doing? What's your footwear doing? But I get it. Sunday best, I grew up with that. I grew up with you need to wear your Sunday best. Gene, come on up and we're going to close out here. You should wear your Sunday best. That's what I was taught, right? What is that? Is it based on price tag? Because I actually have a pair of boots that are super expensive, but they had so much chicken poop on them that I didn't want to wear them because I'd smell them all day. Is that the best? Is your best based on the brand? Is Polo or Puma or Nike or Adidas or whatever brand you wear, is that your best? Here's what I know. There is no dress code in the Bible. There is no bulletin in the Bible. Everything is about worship. So what you're actually asking me, first off, one, if you're a guy, never comment on a lady's pants, whether they be yoga, jeans, or shorts. Don't do it. You'll get punched. But 2, my question around all of this, to answer your question, why do I think it's okay to wear flip-flops? Because Jesus did. Right? Well, they didn't have shoes back in the day, so Jesus didn't mention one thing. I'll tell you what Jesus had. Jesus had really dirty feet. He did. You know why? Because he walked into places that he shouldn't have walked in. He walked up to people that he shouldn't have walked up to. You see, it's not about the shoes you wear. It's not about whether you have holes in your jeans. It's not about whether you wear a shirt tucked in or untucked or pressed or not pressed. You see, here's the deal. I don't care what you wear. It sounds like I'm taking a shot at people who dress up. No, I'm not. If you dressing up and wearing a coat and tie brings you closer to the worship of God, our Father, man, do it. As a matter of fact, I need some of you to keep doing that, because when somebody walks in, they need to see somebody that looks like them. I've been told that there are people that won't come to our church because of the way I dress. Well, I'm just going to tell you, I'm probably not trying to reach them. I'm not. They've probably got an amazing church. And my number one frustration with churches is I feel like there's this contest where we try to pull others from other churches. I'm not in contest. They've got a great church that they're going to. And they're in an environment that they love and can grow and can worship God. Man, yay, wear it. But if you walk in here and you got board shorts and flip-flops and you're worshiping God and you're growing, man, do it. As for yoga pants or ripped jeans, or it comes down to a modesty question if you really want this answer. It's a modesty question. And modesty isn't the clothes that you wear. Modesty is actually the attention that you bring on yourself and away from God. So modesty could be yoga pants. It could also be a bass boat. Modesty could be skinny jeans. It could also be a big truck. And frankly, those of you who grew up in the 60s that say, hey, I just can't believe y'all would wear this to church. Look at what you wore. Like, really? That's okay. Keep laughing, 70s, short shorts and tube socks. Put a fanny pack on them, I'm hiding my kids. Y'all gave us Daisy Duke in the 70s. But can I tell you, it's not about the, please get that off the screen. It's not about the clothes, guys and gals. It's about modesty. And it's about worship. Am I putting focus on the Creator? Or am I putting focus on me? I'm not going to tell you what to wear. I don't care. Neither does God. As a matter of fact, the Bible talks about clothes. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God's saying, I don't care what the outside looks like. I want the heart. I want your heart. I want your heart. 1 Peter 3:3-4. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing that you wear, but let your adorning be the hidden person of your heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is in God's sight is precious. He doesn't care what you wear on your feet. He cares about your heart. He cares about your worship. He cares about your worship. James, my dear brothers and sisters, how can you claim to have faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ if you favor some people over others? Suppose someone comes into your meeting dressed in fancy clothes and expensive jewelry. Another one comes in who is poor and dressed in dirty clothes. If you give special attention and a good seat to the rich person, but you say to the poor one, you can stand over there or else sit on the floor, well, doesn't this discrimination show that your judgments are guided by evil motives? Ha! Listen to me. Hasn't God chosen the poor in this world to be rich in faith? Aren't they the ones who will inherit the kingdom He promised? And to those who love Him. But you dishonor the poor. Isn't it the rich who oppose you and drag you into court? Aren't they the ones who slander Jesus Christ, whose noble name you bear? Yes, it is good when you obey the royal laws found in Scripture. Love your neighbor as yourself. But if you favor some people over others, you are committing a sin. Romans 4:10 is my favorite. So why do you condemn another believer? Why do you look down on them? Remember, we all stand before judgment. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, and your salvation ain't got nothing to do with your clothes. Do not get involved in foolish discussions about spiritual pedigrees or in quarrels and fights about obedience to Jewish laws. These things are useless and a waste of time. See, today I want to talk about, and I want to close with this. I've got a question. What are you worshiping? See, last week I had a question. What is heaven and hell? This week my question is, what are you worshiping? You see in Matthew 5, and I encourage y'all to all go read this. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What is the poor in spirit? It's somebody whose love compels them to contribute to others' good. It's someone who feels that they're indebted to everyone. His life evolves around the life of a servant. His life evolves around the worship of God, the Creator, not the created. He never dreams about great things, but rather takes heed in the little things. No work is insignificant. No one else is too small to be served. Can I tell you something? Ripped jeans, pressed jeans, tucked in, tucked out, none of that matters. What matters is that person who walks through that door that they meet the Savior. And if wearing this, and I wore this on purpose today, I may wear it next week, I don't know. I spend about as much time thinking about what I'm going to wear as you do brushing your teeth in the morning. Usually I grab it in the dark because my wife's still asleep. But here's the truth of it. I spend a whole lot of time in prayer because within 3 miles of our church there are people that are going to stand before God and they're not going to be allowed into heaven. There are people within 3 miles of our church that are going to bust hell wide open, and we're worried about what the preacher wears on his feet. I don't care about the question, but I do care about the lost souls in our city. We got a billboard. Be you. Have an abortion. We've got guys sitting in their recliners right now drinking a beer that won't step foot into this church because they don't think they belong. Because they don't have anything to wear. Breaks my heart. So to answer your question, I just don't care about the clothes. What I do care about is I care about your neighbor. And I care about the guy next door. And I care about the lost soul. That everybody who walks in this church gets introduced to the Savior, Jesus Christ. Heaven and hell are eternity. Can I tell you something? These shoes, about a year from now, they're probably going to go in the trash. These jeans, you could argue, should already be in the trash. Heaven and hell is eternity. We've lost the mission as the church. We're worried about what people wear. We're worried about what banners are in the lobby. We're worried about what paint's on the wall. We need to be worried about heaven and hell. And if you're here this morning, we don't care what you wear. My question to you is, who do you worship? Who do you worship? As our worship team comes up, we're going to finish in worship. And I want to challenge you with this. Stop worrying about everybody else and focus on Him. Stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and focus on Him. Stop worrying about whatever brand they're wearing and start focusing on Him. When we get our worship of the Father right, all the rest of it will work itself out. It's all about worship. The Sabbath, that's a worship question. Tithing, that's a worship question. Heart to Christ, that is a true worship question. Who are you worshiping? What are you worshiping? Get that right, we get the rest right. God, this morning, great questions. God, we've lost your message. Go into the world and bring others to you. Be all things to all people so that they may know you. God, we've gotten so blinded by rules and tradition and the world. God, everything's about you. So God, I commit today. I commit for our church that God allow us to point people to you in every way. That it's not about the little things, it's about the main thing, and that main thing is you. God, we give you our worship, we give you our heart, we give you our city. If we turn and we humble ourselves and we get on our face, you will hear our cry. We cry out to you in worship. In Jesus' name.